Hey everybody, it is time for me to wrap up some more reading. Here's a stack of books that I've read lately, and let me tell you, all of them are 100% worth your time. I cannot wait to tell you about each and every one of them, so let's get started. Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you all doing? I hope you guys are healthy. I hope you guys are safe. And I, of course, hope that you guys have been getting some reading done. If you're in the United States, the Thanksgiving holiday has just passed. So I hope that you guys were able to do something to relax, maybe celebrate it in a different way, as 2020 has made us do a lot of things differently. But I really hope that everyone is safe and healthy with the new sort of rise of the coronavirus. I just want everyone to be really, really well. So sending my best wishes to all of you. Now, I did know that in my last video, I talked about how cold I was, and everybody reminded me that it is much colder in other parts of the United States, and I'm sure elsewhere. I cannot deal with snow. It will never be something that I can even fathom living in. But I know, I'm very lucky that 30 degrees is probably the coldest I see. But I'm growing this big winter beard in an attempt to warm my face because I am freezing, people. But today I am here to talk to you guys about a big stack of books that I have read lately that were so good, all of these. So very, very good. So much so that I actually did a separate video for 3 of them, and then I read another one that I would have included in that. That's how good my reading has been going. I have to say that 2020 has been very surprising to me because how up and down my reading has been because of everything that's going on. But I have read some amazing titles, and it is going to be so difficult to pick a top 10 at the end of the year. So let's get started on this, okay? So get out your pen, your paper, your Goodreads, however you keep track of your TBR. If you are so able, order these books from your local independent bookstore, and or if you're a library user, go ahead and get your library to get you a copy. The first book I'm going to talk about was the one that I read the longest ago, and that is Ring Shout by Djeli Clark. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this name, Mr. Clark. But this is out from Tor.com, and this is a fantastic sort of historical sci-fi retelling set around 1950 when the movie Birth of a Nation came out. Now, that movie was really a call to white supremacists across the United States. And what Mr. Clark does in his book is he sort of takes that and turns it on its head in the fact that the Ku Klux Klan, as we know it, historically does exist in his narrative. But there are also these demons called the Ku Kluxes that have infiltrated this group and are sort of taking things over. The movie Birth of a Nation in the novel is about to be reissued, and it's sort of this call to all of these people and all of these demons to come out forthwith and sort of just take over. Now, what is at the center of our book are 3 very spunky, wonderful, kick-butt heroines that are really just out there attacking and taking down the Ku Klux demons and ridding them from the United States. I did a whole review on this in that video that I was telling you about, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I will tell you, he has such a way of making a fast-paced, interesting narrative where you're bought into the characters. All these women are so fantastic and so well thought out, but at the same time, it's a social commentary, it's a discussion of race, and it's also sort of flipping something on its head and looking at it from a different angle in such a way that it's so interesting and thought-provoking as well. I highly, highly recommend Ring Shout by Djeli Clark out from Tor.com. Okay, now we're going to take a big old left turn and go to a nice, cozy, British spinster narrative, which you guys know. It's at my heart, guys. It's really at my heart. And that is Miss Plum and Miss Penny by Dorothy Evelyn Smith. This is out from Dean Street Press, which is one of my new favorites ever in the world. And I had never heard of this book until I just found it on their website. And I believe this one was originally published in it says 59 was the copyright. I don't know if that was the original copyright, but it is everything I love. So we have Miss Penny is our star player. She is a spinster in all the wonderful ways that world is thrown around incorrectly. But she lives by herself. She runs her own sort of life, and she and her housekeeper have a very happy life together. Really, the only sort of thing that comes in is once a year she gets a letter from this man that she sort of almost married years ago on her birthday, and it is her birthday, and she's out about and she runs into Miss Plum. Now Miss Plum is about to walk herself into the local duck pond, and it appears that she's going to end her life. Miss Penny will not have that. She runs in, she saves Miss Plum and takes her home. And it turns out that decision in and of itself causes so much havoc, not only in Miss Plum's life, but around her whole entire little township. We get to meet many fascinating, great side characters, men that are all infatuated with Miss Penny for different reasons. And they are so well put together, and they're just, it's so charming, and there's laughs. But at the heart of it is this relationship between these two women living in the same house with these weird difficulties. And there's a turn of events that I'm not going to spoil for you guys, but it is really well done. It is just a charming, lovely book. If you like D.E. Stevens, if you like Barbara Pym, maybe not as sophisticated in its wit as Barbara Pym, but has that wholesome narrative nature to it. I absolutely adored it, and I am flying through Dean Steen Press. They're not in here today. I'm going to actually do a lot of them, I think, in a video soon, but I really, really loved this. So that's Miss Plum and Miss Penny by Dorothy Evelyn Smith, and you can get this now from Dean Street Press. I ordered it through my local independent bookstore, and they were able to get it for me pretty quickly. The next book I am going to tell you about is one that probably needs little discussion, and that is Piranesi by Susanna Clark. This is out from Bloomsbury here in the United States. And I'm just going to take a moment. This is a beautiful cover, but I'm just going to undo this real quick and show you guys how beautiful the hardback is, and then the end papers. And then tell you that this book is darn near impossible to discuss because it's so weirdly wonderful. But basically what we have sort of a nameless narrator who lives in this giant building that is a bunch of connected hallways. And it's sort of like 3 stories. So on the top story is like the air and the sky, and there's birds up there. And then the level that he lives on is in the middle. And then in the bottom level, there's flooded parts of this building, and there are fish and algae, and this is how he suffices. But what he find out that there is one other person that he knows of that exists, and he is in this world, and he is sort of doing all of this investigation, and he is chronicling things and keeping things in notebooks. However, he doesn't know how he got there exactly. And his relationship with this other man, though usually in sort of some nature of exploring these hallways, is never really sort of defined for him. He doesn't know. He thinks that there are only these 2 people in the world. And then things start to change. Another sort of entity starts to enter. I don't want to give any away because I do think that that's part of the mystery and the excitement. But this is really a story about a couple things. This is about a man in isolation trying to determine what's real and what's not real. But there is also sort of a discussion regarding mental health and stability for many different people that we meet throughout the narrative. But it's also like just a really interesting setting and place that's so well developed that it is sort of just creepy but also inviting. I don't know if that makes sense. It is just a wonderful, wonderful book. And at the end, you may not really understand what happened. I don't know that I really do, but I still loved it so very, very much. So that is Susanna Clark's Piranesi out from Bloomsbury. I highly recommend it. If you liked her other book, Mr. Strange, I always forget, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norwell, I highly recommend. I think she hit this one out of the park too. And it's different enough from that narrative that you never feel like you're just reading something else. She's really gone in a different direction for us. So brava, Susanna Clark, really, really good. Another book that was in that video that I talked about that I could talk about forever is The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans. This is out from Riverhead Books. This is a collection of stories with one long novella at the end. and hands down will be going down currently as my favorite short story collection of all times. Danielle Evans is a master of creating space and environment and people in short instances, but keeping a narrative going that is so complex but so interesting. And she turns things in every story. There's a moment where she just turns things on its head and you are like, what did just happen? Oh my goodness. And it is brilliant. Every story sort of deals with the dynamics between people. There's discussions of race, there's discussions of gender, and there's also discussions of the historical accuracy of the record, the historical record, and how things are sort of fudged at times, and how sometimes we'll take a bad event and sort of make it not seem as bad as it was in order to just sort of bypass the relevance of that action. I hope that makes sense. I have so much to say about this book. It was one of the books in my 3-rave review video. I think that it is brilliant and she is a phenomenal writer, and I am on the hunt for her first collection because she is amazing. So that's The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans, and it is so very, very good, people. Trust me. A book that I read, it was actually a quick read, but it is a lovely read, is this graphic memoir, The Times I Knew I Was Gay by Eleanor Cruz. And this is out by Scribner here in the United States. And this is just a charming, charming book. And it is about Eleanor's coming out of the closet experience. And she talks about the amount of times when you are a gay man, a lesbian, someone who is transgender, or bisexual, or any of our community, where the amount of times that you come out of the closet and then sort of go back in the closet, when you sort of test the waters and go back and forth. And she does it with such wit and charm, but it's so set in reality too, that if you have done this yourself, if you are a person who has come out of the closet in some way, you'll feel a real connection to her. But also, if you are not, you will also understand sort of the dilemma of it all. I've had many a conversation, and I know that this is not a thought that is nuanced to myself, but the idea that gay men and women and members of our community consistently have to come out. You come out almost every day in some way or fashion. And Eleanor does an amazing job of sort of taking that moment in that instance and sort of adding her own sense of charm and wit to it. I just thought it was very, very adorable, and I really, really loved it. So that's The Time I Knew I Was Gay by Eleanor Cruz, out now from Scribner. And I think that is actually on the finalist list for the Goodreads graphic memoir, maybe? I can't remember, but I know it's on one of the finalist lists. So highly recommend it, guys and gals. A book that I have just finished not that long ago and raved about was The Orchard by David Hopen. This is out from Ecco Books right now. You can get your hands on it. I sort of call this how I want to say this. So this is the story of a young Jewish boy that lives in a very Orthodox community in New York, where his dad has lost his job and decides to move them to a Jewish community in Florida that is very different, much more progressive than the world he came from. And also the education is very, very different. And he comes to this community and he sort of starts to make friends with these people. And this all flips his life on its head. He has always sort of, from the beginning of the narrative, you get an idea that he's always sort of questioned his faith or his dedication to his faith and has wanted to experience the world. When he gets to high school, he becomes part of a group of guys, friends, and he becomes infatuated with a girl. And it's all of that sort of teenage angst. That's one half of the narrative. The other part is sort of this philosophical conversation about his religion with the other boys in his community, in his friend group, and most prominently a boy named Evan, who he sort of in a way has this kinship with. They're both very bright and they both think about things differently, but Evan has had a tragedy in his life that has sort of set him off his track. And it's about how all of that comes together. It is a page turner of a novel. And at times, though, you really are sort of brought into these philosophical, religious ethics conversations that these boys are having with their rabbi principal, and how all of that sort of comes together to form who they are. Takes some dark turns, some dark twists, but the main character, Ari, is completely compelling. And there are a couple times where I felt like his transition was a little bit quick, but I really understood him as a character. And I was really interested in sort of this dynamic, this discussion of faith, this idea of coming up. He's, a senior when the book starts. And so he's led his whole life one way. What happens when that sort of gets a question mark? And David does an amazing job of sort of having that discussion. So that's The Orchard by David Hopen. I hope you guys pick it up. It is really good. It's a debut novel, and I'm a big, big fan of it. Okay, last but not least is a book that I almost would do a full video on. And it will 100% be in my top 10. He may be book 1 or 2, to be honest with you. And that is Memorial by Bryan Washington. Now, Bryan Washington wrote the short story collection Lot. I think that was out last year or the year before, and it got phenomenal reviews. Memorial is the story of a relationship between two men, Benson and Mike. Benson is an African-American man and Michael is Japanese-American. At the start of the novel, we find out that Michael's mother is flying in from Japan to stay with them, but Michael is going to be leaving immediately because he is going to go to Japan, where he has learned that his father is very ill. And the book is told in 3 sections. The first section is about Benson and his relationship, or his development of his relationship with Michael's mother when she arrives. Not only do we get to learn about how they sort of learn together, but we learn the history of Benson and Michael in a way that sort of puts us in perspective that their relationship is a little bit on the rocks, and they don't know exactly what their future holds. The second section is told from the point of view of Mike in Japan. He goes there. He's been estranged from his father for some time. He shows up, and his father owns a bar, and their relationship sort of starts to develop almost anew. They sort of have to figure out what they are going to be to each other. Michael has come out of the closet. His father sort of struggles with that a little bit. But it's also about being in Japan and Michael sort of coming to terms with where Benson and his relationship was and what he wants from that relationship. And then in the end is another section where sort of everything comes together, and it's about family, and it's about relationships, and it's about faith in one another. And it's also about the difficult decisions that people have to make when relationships do go sour. Do you walk away? Do you stay around? And there are many a relationship in this book that are discussed from very different angles that allow you to sort of compare and contrast Bryan Washington's discussion of the importance of when do you stay in a relationship? When do you walk away? When is it hurting you to be there? And it is a fantastic book. Now, Bryan Washington has a very unique writing style. There is like a dissonance to his word choice that sort of rings very true to me as a reader. I believe in the way he writes. I feel a real sense of realism to it, and I also felt a real connection to it. I can see that it may not be for everybody. There are no quotation marks, which is sort of becoming more and more common nowadays. But in doing so, he creates this rhythm that to me really works as a narrative force. And I thought it was brilliant, and I was really bought in. The ending left me with the emotions I needed for this to be a successful book, and I loved it. I absolutely adored it. I think it is brilliant. So that is Memorial by Bryan Washington. So that's quite a stack of books. I hope you guys like some of them. I hope all of them wind up on your TBR as always. And I have to say, if you're a return subscriber, thank you so much. If you are new to my channel, I appreciate you coming by. I hope you click subscribe and come around for some more. As always, I encourage you to shop locally, read globally, and until next time, I wish you happy reading. Bye.